The storm arrived without mercy, covering the city in thick white snow and turning familiar streets into dangerous paths. The wind howled like it was alive, pushing icy air through every open space. People rushed indoors. Shops closed early, and the streets slowly emptied as darkness fell. It was one of those nights when everyone wanted to be safe at home. She was a black woman in her early 30s, tired after a long day of work, walking carefully through the snow with her coat pulled tight around her body. Her boots slipped with every step, and her fingers felt numb even inside her gloves. She could have taken a longer but safer route, yet she chose the shorter way, hoping to reach home quickly before the storm grew worse. Snowflakes fell heavily, sticking to her hair and eyelashes, making it hard to see clearly. Streetlights flickered through the storm, their yellow glow weak against the thick snowfall. The city felt quiet and lonely, almost forgotten. She focused on putting one foot in front of the other, telling herself she was almost home. Then she heard a sound that did not belong to the storm, a shaky voice, soft but desperate, calling out for help. At first, she thought the wind was playing tricks on her ears, but the sound came again, clearer this time. Fear and worry filled her chest as she looked around. Her heart told her someone nearby was in trouble. Across the street, near a bus stop covered in snow, she saw an elderly woman standing still. Her body was thin, her coat old and not warm enough for such weather. Snow had covered her shoulders, and her hand was shaking badly. The woman's eyes stared forward, unfocused, and it became clear she could not see. The younger woman felt a rush of concern. This elderly lady was blind, alone, and trapped in the middle of a deadly snowstorm. Anyone could see that staying outside much longer could cost her life. The younger woman hesitated for a moment. The storm was dangerous, and stopping meant more time in the freezing cold, but something deep inside her would not let her walk away. She slowly crossed the street, careful not to slip. Her heart beat fast, not just from the cold, but from fear of what might happen next. When she reached the elderly woman, she gently spoke to her, trying not to scare her. The blind woman turned her head toward the sound, relief washing over her face as tears mixed with melting snow. The elderly woman explained in a weak voice that she had been separated from her caregiver earlier that day. The storm had started suddenly, and she became confused. She could not see where she was, could not find her phone, and had been standing there for a long time, hoping someone kind would pass by. Each minute felt like an hour to her. The younger woman felt her chest tighten with emotion. She could not imagine the fear of being blind and alone in such weather. She noticed the woman's hands were ice cold, and her lips slightly blue, signs that time was running out. The snowstorm showed no signs of slowing down, and the temperature kept dropping. Cars passed by slowly, some drivers looking but not stopping. Others did not even notice the two women through the heavy snowfall. It was one of those moments that showed how easy it was for people to miss someone in need. The younger woman knew she had to act quickly. She wrapped her own scarf around the elderly woman's neck and placed her arm gently around her shoulders. The blind woman held on her tightly, trusting a stranger she had just met. That trust felt heavy but important. The younger woman promised she would not leave her alone, even if it meant risking her own safety. As the wind grew stronger, the younger woman looked around for help, a warm place, a phone, anything that could save them from the storm. The night felt endless, but this moment would soon become the start of something life-changing. A single decision made in the middle of a snowstorm was about to connect two lives forever, even though neither of them knew it yet. This was the night when everything changed, not because of money or power, but because one person chose kindness when it mattered most. The cold felt sharper now, cutting through the air as the storm grew louder and angrier. Snow swirled around them, hiding the road, the buildings, and almost everything else. The younger woman could feel the elderly woman shaking beside her, not just from the cold but from fear. The blind woman spoke slowly, her voice weak and trembling. She said her name softly and explained that she had been out with her caregiver earlier in the day. They were supposed to return home before sunset, but the weather changed suddenly. The snow came faster than expected. Buses stopped running, and people began rushing in every direction. At some point, in the confusion and noise, the caregiver was pushed away by the crowd. The blind woman called out, but her voice was lost in the storm. She stood still, too afraid to move, hoping someone would come back for her. Minutes turned into hours, and the cold slowly began to steal her strength. As she spoke, tears ran down her face, freezing on her cheeks. The younger woman listened carefully, her heart growing heavier with every word. She realized how close this woman was to losing her life. One more hour in the snow could have ended everything. The younger woman tried calling for help. She took out her phone with numb fingers, but the screen kept freezing, the signal was weak, and every call failed. She looked around for a shop, a police station, or even an open building, but everything was closed. The storm had shut the whole area down. The elderly woman's breathing became slower, and her grip tightened on the younger woman's arm. She whispered that she was very tired and just wanted to sit down. Those words scared the younger woman deeply. She knew that sitting down in such cold could be dangerous, even deadly. She spoke gently but firmly, telling the blind woman to stay awake and keep talking. She asked about her life, her family, anything to keep her mind active. The blind woman smiled faintly and spoke about her late husband, about long walks they used to take when she could still see, about music she loved. Her memories flowed like a quiet river in the middle of the storm. The younger woman felt tears in her own eyes, not from the cold but from emotion. She thought about how unfair life could be, how someone so gentle could be left alone in such a cruel moment. The storm felt less like nature and more like a test of humanity. Suddenly, a strong gust of wind knocked them slightly off balance. Snow covered their faces, and the younger woman struggled to stay standing. She realized they could not stay there any longer. They needed shelter, warmth, and safety immediately. She made a quick decision. Her home was not far, small and simple, but warm. It was risky to walk further in the storm, yet staying here was far more dangerous. She tightened her grip around the elderly woman and explained slowly what they were going to do. The blind woman nodded, trusting her completely. Step by step, they moved forward. The snow reached their ankles, sometimes higher. Every step felt heavy. The younger woman's legs burned from the effort, but she refused to stop. She kept talking, encouraging the elderly woman, promising they would be safe soon. Cars passed them again, their lights glowing like distant stars. Some slowed down, but kept moving. No one stopped. The younger woman felt a mix of anger and understanding. People were scared, the storm was strong, but still it hurt to see how easily someone in need could be ignored. The elderly woman suddenly stumbled. Nearly falling, the younger woman held her tightly. Feeling how light her body was, that moment filled her with urgency. She realized how fragile life truly was, how one slip, one delay, could change everything. After what felt like forever, they reached the small building where the younger woman lived. She struggled to unlock the door with frozen hands. But finally, it opened. Warm air rushed out, wrapping around them like a blessing. As they stepped inside, the elderly woman let out a quiet sob, a sound filled with relief, safety, and gratitude. The younger woman closed the door behind them, blocking out the storm, unaware that this single act of compassion would soon bring consequences she never imagined. That night was far from over, but the most dangerous part had been survived, and two strangers were now connected by a moment that would echo into the next day and beyond. The warmth of the small apartment felt unreal after the freezing storm outside. The heater hummed softly, and the air slowly brought life back into their numb bodies. The younger woman helped the elderly woman sit down carefully on an old sofa, removing her snow-covered shoes and rubbing her hands to bring back circulation. The blind woman's breathing was shaky at first, but little by little it became calmer. She kept saying thank you in a weak voice, her words full of emotion. The younger woman smiled gently and told her she was safe now. Even though her own body was tired and cold, she pushed her discomfort aside, knowing the older woman needed her strength more. She went to the small kitchen and quickly made a warm drink. Her hands still trembled as she poured hot water into a cup. She added a little sugar and brought it back carefully, guiding the cup to the elderly woman's hands. The blind woman smiled when she felt the warmth, holding it close like a precious gift. As the minutes passed, color slowly returned to the elderly woman's face. She relaxed into the sofa, her shoulders no longer tight with fear. The storm outside continued to scream against the windows, but inside the room there was calm, safety, and quiet understanding between two strangers. The younger woman wrapped a blanket around the elderly woman and sat beside her. She asked gently if she was in pain or feeling dizzy. The blind woman shook her head and said she only felt very tired. Her voice softened as she spoke about how afraid she had been standing alone in the snow, not knowing where she was, not knowing if anyone would help her. Hearing this, the younger woman felt a deep ache in her chest. She thought about how easy it would have been to ignore that soft cry for help. How different this night would be if she had chosen to walk away. That thought stayed with her, heavy and powerful. The blind woman reached out slowly, her hand searching. The younger woman took it without hesitation. The touch was gentle but full of trust. She said she could feel kindness in the young woman's voice from the first moment, that she knew she was safe when she heard her speak. Those words stayed in the room like warmth. The younger woman felt tears in her eyes, but she smiled. She said anyone would have done the same, though deep inside she knew that was not always true. As the storm continued, the electricity flickered once, then stayed steady. The younger woman stayed alert, checking the elderly woman's temperature and making sure she stayed awake. She told her small stories to pass the time, about her work, her neighborhood, and the simple joys of daily life. The blind woman listened closely, smiling at certain moments, nodding at others. She shared stories too, about her younger days, about traveling with her husband, about how losing her sight had changed everything but not taken away her love for life. Her voice carried wisdom, patience, and quiet strength. Hours passed slowly. The younger woman felt exhaustion creeping into her bones, but she refused to sleep. She knew the danger was not completely gone yet. Hypothermia could still be a risk, and help would not come until the storm weakened. She checked her phone again. This time, the signal returned for a moment. She managed to send a short message to emergency services, explaining the situation and giving her address. Relief washed over her when she received a reply, saying help would come as soon as roads were safe. The blind woman squeezed her hand when she heard the news. Her lips moved in silent prayer. Filled with gratitude, she said she believed everything happened for a reason, that fate had guided the young woman to her at the exact moment she needed help. The younger woman listened quietly, not fully understanding what the future held, but feeling that something important had already changed inside her. The storm outside felt distant now, like a memory rather than a threat. As the night stretched on, the younger woman sat beside the elderly woman, protecting her, watching over her, choosing compassion again and again with every passing minute. Without knowing it, this choice, made in silence and kindness, was building a bridge toward a moment that would soon shock her entire world. The night grew quieter as the storm slowly lost its strength. The wind still whispered outside, but no longer sounded angry. Inside the small apartment, the air was warm and calm. The elderly woman rested on the sofa, wrapped in blankets, while the younger woman stayed close, watching every small movement. The blind woman's breathing became steady, rising and falling in a peaceful rhythm. Her face looked softer now, free from fear. The younger woman felt relief but did not allow herself to relax completely. She knew the danger had not fully passed. The cold could leave hidden effects, and she wanted to be sure the woman stayed safe until help arrived. She brought a bowl of warm soup from the kitchen and helped the elderly woman eat slowly. Guiding the spoon carefully, the blind woman smiled between bites, saying it tasted better than anything she had eaten in years, not because of the food itself, but because it came with care and kindness. As they sat together, silence filled the room for a moment. It was not an uncomfortable silence, but a gentle one. Filled with understanding, the blind woman broke it by asking softly about the younger woman's life, her dreams, her struggles, and how she had learned to be so kind. The younger woman hesitated, then began to speak honestly. She talked about growing up with very little, about learning early that life could be unfair. She shared how she had faced moments of loneliness, moments when she wished someone would help her. Those experiences had shaped her heart, teaching her never to ignore someone in need. The blind woman listened carefully, nodding slowly. She said pain often made people cold, but sometimes it made them compassionate. She believed the younger woman belonged to the second group. Those words touched the younger woman deeply. Outside, snow continued to fall lightly, covering the city in silence. Inside, the two women shared stories like old friends. The blind woman spoke about her past, about a life filled with travel, music, and love. She talked about losing her sight years ago, how it changed her world, but not her spirit. She admitted that the storm had frightened her more than she wanted to admit. Standing alone, unable to see, unsure if anyone would care enough to stop, she said she had started to lose hope just before the younger woman appeared. Hearing this, the younger woman felt a deep wave of emotion. She realized how close this moment had come to tragedy, how easily the story could have ended differently. That thought made her promise herself she would never forget this night. As the hours passed, fatigue settled in. The younger woman's eyes felt heavy, her body sore, but she stayed awake, checking the elderly woman's hands and forehead, making sure she stayed warm. She adjusted the blankets and kept the heater steady. At one point, the blind woman reached out and touched the younger woman's face gently. She said she wished she could see her, but she did not need eyes to know what kind of person she was. That kindness had its own light. Those words stayed with the younger woman, warming her heart more than the heater ever could. She smiled softly and held the woman's hand, feeling a bond that had formed in just a few hours. Near dawn, the sky outside began to change color. The storm had finally passed, leaving behind quiet streets and heavy snow. The younger woman received a message confirming that emergency services were on their way. Relief filled her chest. When she told the blind woman, the elderly woman whispered a quiet thank you, not just to her rescuer, but to life itself. She said she would never forget what had been done for her, no matter what happened next. As morning light slowly entered the room, the younger woman looked around her simple home, realizing how this ordinary place had become a shelter, a lifeline, and a turning point. She did not know what the next day would bring, but she felt certain of one thing. This night of survival, trust, and compassion had created a connection that would soon reach far beyond this small apartment, changing lives in ways neither of them could yet imagine. Morning arrived quietly, like it did not want to disturb what had happened during the night. Pale sunlight slipped through the window, reflecting off the white snow outside. The storm was gone, leaving behind a calm that felt almost unreal after the chaos. The younger woman stretched her tired arms and looked toward the sofa. The elderly woman was awake, sitting up slowly, her face peaceful but weak. She smiled when she heard movement and said she could feel the warmth of morning. It sounded like hope in her voice. The younger woman helped her stand carefully, making sure her legs were steady. She guided her to the bathroom so she could wash her face and hands, simple things that felt important after surviving such a long night. The elderly woman laughed softly, saying she felt human again. They returned to the living room, where the younger woman prepared a simple breakfast, warm bread, tea, and a little fruit. The blind woman ate slowly, enjoying every bite. She said food tasted different when eaten with gratitude. As they sat together, the younger woman checked her phone again. This time, there were messages from emergency services confirming they were close. Hearing this brought relief, but also a strange sadness. The night had been terrifying, yet had created a bond that now felt hard to let go of. When she told the elderly woman that help was on the way, the blind woman became quiet for a moment. Then she smiled and nodded, saying it was time. Her voice was calm, but her hands tightened slightly around the cup she was holding. She thanked the younger woman again, this time more slowly, more deeply. She said words did not feel enough to explain what this kindness had meant to her. She had truly believed she might die alone in the snow. And now she was alive, warm, and safe. The younger woman felt her throat tighten. She said she was just glad she had been there, that anyone would have done the same. Even as she said it, she knew that night had required a choice, and she was grateful she had listened to her heart. Soon, the sound of voices came from outside, followed by the soft knock of help arriving. Emergency workers entered carefully, bringing warmth, professionalism, and reassurance. They praised the younger woman for her actions, saying she had likely saved the elderly woman's life. As they prepared to take the blind woman to the hospital for a checkup, the room filled with movement and sound. The elderly woman stood with help, adjusting her coat. The moment felt heavy, like the closing of a chapter. Before leaving, the blind woman turned toward the younger woman. Her hands reached out, finding her arms. Then her shoulders, she pulled her into a gentle embrace, one filled with gratitude, relief, and emotion. She whispered that she would never forget her voice, that even without sight, she would always remember the feeling of safety she had given her. She said kindness like that did not disappear. It always came back in ways people never expected. The younger woman hugged her back, holding on just a moment longer. She said she hoped the woman would be healthy and surrounded by love. Their goodbye was quiet but powerful. As the door closed behind the emergency workers, the apartment suddenly felt empty. The silence returned, but it felt different now. The younger woman stood still for a moment, letting everything sink in. She cleaned up slowly, folding blankets, washing cups, returning life to normal. Yet nothing felt normal anymore. The memory of the night stayed in her thoughts, replaying like a dream that felt too real to forget. Later that day, she stepped outside. The city had changed. Streets were buried in snow. People moved carefully, talking about the storm. She walked past the same bus stop where she had found the blind woman, now quiet and empty. She paused for a moment, looking at the place where it all began, feeling proud, humbled, and grateful all at once. She believed that was the end of the story, a hard night, a good deed, and a goodbye. She did not know that fate was still working quietly, that somewhere, someone important had just learned what she had done, and that the next day would bring a knock on her door that would change her life forever. The next day began like any other, quiet and ordinary. The younger woman woke up feeling sore from the long night, her body still carrying the memory of cold and exhaustion. She moved slowly through her small apartment, making tea and trying to return her normal routine, believing that the storm and everything that came with it was now behind her. Outside, the city was waking up after the snowfall. Snowplows passed by, people shoveled sidewalks, and life slowly returned to motion. The younger woman watched through the window for a moment, thinking about the blind woman and hoping she was safe and recovering well. Then she turned away, ready to focus on her day. A sudden knock on the door broke the quiet. It was firm but polite, unexpected at such an early hour. The younger woman frowned slightly, wondering who it could be. She was not expecting anyone, and deliveries rarely came this early. She opened the door carefully, and in that moment, her world shifted. Standing outside was a tall man dressed in an expensive coat. His shoes were spotless despite the snow, and behind him stood a sleek black car that did not belong in her modest neighborhood. The man introduced himself calmly, his voice controlled but emotional underneath. He said his name slowly and asked if he could speak with her for a moment. His presence felt heavy, serious, and important. The younger woman felt nervous but stepped aside, allowing him to enter. Once inside, the man looked around the small apartment. His eyes paused on the folded blankets and the cup on the table, as if recognizing signs of what had happened the night before. He took a deep breath and explained why he was there. He said his mother was blind and had gone missing during the snowstorm. Security teams and police had searched all night. Fear had consumed him as hours passed with no news. Then that morning, he received a call from the hospital saying she had been found alive, thanks to a woman who took her in during the storm. The younger woman felt her heart race as realization hit her. She nodded slowly, confirming that she had helped an elderly blind woman the night before. The man's eyes filled with emotion. He stood up suddenly and thanked her, his voice breaking for the first time. He explained that he was a businessman, known publicly as a billionaire, but in that moment, titles meant nothing. He was simply a son who had almost lost his mother. He said no amount of money could measure what she had done. The younger woman felt overwhelmed. She insisted she did not do it for praise or reward. She said she only did what felt right. Her words were simple but honest. The man listened carefully, deeply moved by her humility. He explained how his mother had spoken about her, how she described the sound of her voice, the warmth of her hands, and the way she never left her side. He said his mother believed the young woman was sent to her at the perfect moment. The room grew quiet as the weight of the situation settled in. The younger woman struggled to process what was happening. Just yesterday, she had been a stranger helping another stranger. Now she was sitting across from one of the most powerful men in the city. The billionaire stood and walked toward the door, then stopped. Turning back, he said this was not the end. He promised he would find a way to repay her kindness, not out of obligation, but out of deep gratitude. The younger woman watched as he left, still stunned. The door closed softly, leaving her alone in the apartment. Her heart beat fast, her thoughts racing. She sat down slowly, trying to understand how one simple choice had led to this moment. She had not planned any of it. She had only listened to a quiet voice inside her heart. Outside, the black car disappeared down the snowy street, and the younger woman remained seated, unaware that this knock was only the beginning of a new chapter, one that would test her values, change her future, and prove that true kindness always finds its way back. The events of the previous night still lingered in the younger woman's mind. Her apartment was quiet now, but her thoughts were loud. She replayed every moment of helping the blind woman, every step through the snow, every whispered word of fear and gratitude. Then the knock at the door yesterday morning had shifted her reality completely. After the billionaire left, she could hardly focus. She kept thinking about what he had said, that he wanted to repay her kindness, not with expectation, but with deep gratitude. At first, she had shrugged it off, feeling that what she had done was only human. Yet the weight of his visit lingered, a reminder that even small acts could ripple far beyond what she imagined. Later that morning, a car pulled up outside her building. Not the same sleek black vehicle as before, but equally impressive. The driver stepped out and opened the door for her. The billionaire had returned, this time bringing a team with him. Not for business, not for negotiation, but for a meeting that felt personal and important. He greeted her warmly, his tone full of sincerity, and invited her to sit. She could see in his eyes the mix of relief, respect, and admiration. He began to recount the events of the previous night from his perspective. How frantic he had been, searching every possible place, fearing the worst. How news finally came of his mother being safe, alive, and cared for. He spoke slowly, almost reverently, about how she described the young woman who saved her, the sound of her voice, the care in her hands, the courage it had taken to guide her through the snowstorm. Every word painted a picture that humbled the younger woman. She had never imagined that her quiet act of compassion would leave such a mark. Then he shifted the conversation, explaining how his gratitude could not be measured by words alone. He spoke of opportunities to help her family, support her career, and even provide financial security. But unlike most people, he did not offer it arrogantly or as a transaction. He offered it humbly, emphasizing that it was her courage and heart that deserved recognition. The younger woman listened, feeling a mix of surprise, discomfort, and curiosity. She had never interacted with someone of such wealth or influence in this way. Yet the sincerity in his eyes told her that this was not about money, but about honoring a life she had protected. The billionaire shared how his mother had been deeply moved, how she insisted that the young woman must know the value of what she had done, that even without expecting anything, she had shown humanity at its finest, and that in the world such acts should never go unnoticed. Tears welled in the younger woman's eyes. She said softly that she did not need reward. She had only done what she would hope someone would do for her in the same situation. But he shook his head, smiling, explaining that sometimes even the smallest choices could create enormous impact, and that her bravery deserved acknowledgement. He extended a hand, not as a businessman to a stranger, but as a son to the woman who had saved his mother's life. He said he hoped she would continue to help others, that her kindness could inspire more, and that he wanted to ensure she had the support to do so. The room fell into a calm silence, heavy with meaning. She realized then that her life, which had felt ordinary, was about to be touched by extraordinary consequences, not because she sought them, but because she had acted with compassion, courage, and integrity. When the meeting ended, she walked him to the door, feeling a strange mix of nervousness and anticipation. Outside, the city was alive, snow still glimmering under the winter sun. She took a deep breath, understanding that this moment marked a turning point, not just for her, but for the life she had chosen to protect. The billionaire left with a promise to keep in touch, to ensure that her kindness was recognized and that she could continue making a difference. She watched him go, her heart full, knowing that she had done nothing extraordinary in her own eyes, yet the world had already begun to see it differently. For the first time in a long time, she felt a sense of possibility, a feeling that life could change in ways no one could predict, that the simple act of helping someone in need could bring gratitude, connection, and opportunities she had never imagined. And as she closed the door behind her, she understood something profound. True kindness never goes unnoticed, and sometimes it has the power to change everything, not just for those we help, but for ourselves as well. The days that followed the billionaire's visit were filled with a quiet, almost surreal energy. The younger woman went about her routine, yet nothing felt ordinary anymore. Each movement, each step she took seemed connected to the night when snow had covered the city and a blind woman's life had hung in the balance. She often thought about the elderly woman, wondering how she was doing, whether she had recovered fully from the storm, whether she had smiled or felt safe, and she realized that the small act of compassion had created a bond that stretched far beyond the cold streets, beyond fear, beyond herself. The billionaire's team returned a few days later, not with fans or gifts, but with quiet gestures of support. They offered assistance for her family, educational opportunities she had dreamed about but never pursued, and resources to help her continue helping others. It was not charity, but a recognition that her courage and humanity had created something far bigger than a single night. She accepted some of the help humbly, refusing extravagance, yet she could not deny the relief it brought. For the first time, she felt secure, a feeling she had not allowed herself to feel in years. She understood that her life was shifting, that the choices she had made would echo in ways she could not fully predict. She also realized something more profound, a truth she had always known but had never fully experienced. The world sometimes responds to kindness in ways we cannot imagine, that helping someone, even in the smallest way, can set off a chain of events that changes lives, and sometimes even changes history in a private, intimate way. Weeks passed, and the younger woman continued her life with renewed purpose. She volunteered at shelters, checked on neighbors, and shared stories of empathy and courage. Her example inspired others in her community, people she had never met before, to act with kindness, to notice those who might be invisible in the chaos of life. She often remembered the elderly woman's touch, her voice, her quiet words of gratitude. She thought about the snowstorm, the night filled with fear, yet also filled with hope, and she realized that one night had changed not just one life, but two, maybe more. The ripple effect was already spreading, and she was part of something much bigger than herself. Then, months later, the billionaire returned, not with gifts or business proposals, but with a simple letter, handwritten, thanking her again for her courage, for her heart, and for reminding him and the world that humanity was more valuable than wealth, that a single act of selfless bravery could illuminate the darkness in ways no money could ever buy. The younger woman read the letter over and over, feeling warmth in her chest, a mix of pride, humility, and awe. She understood that life's greatest rewards often came quietly, without fanfare, without expectation, but they were real, lasting, and powerful. Looking back, she realized that she had learned more about herself than she had ever known, that courage was not about strength, but about choosing to act even when fear threatened to paralyze, that kindness was not weakness, but a force capable of changing the world, that fate sometimes waited silently for one person to make a choice, and that choice could shift destiny itself. And though she would never have imagined it at the start, she now knew that night in the snowstorm, helping a blind elderly woman, had become more than a story. It had become a testament to the power of compassion, a reminder that human hearts, when brave enough, could reach far beyond the impossible. touching lives, inspiring gratitude, and creating a legacy that would last forever. In the end, she understood the truth everyone hopes to discover, that life's miracles often arrive quietly, through the simplest of acts, that one person, willing to help, can change everything, and sometimes the world notices in ways beyond comprehension. And as she went about her days, helping, guiding, and living with purpose, she felt a quiet joy, knowing that her story, born in a snowstorm, would continue to touch hearts long after the storm had passed.